we're moving in the direction of allowing multi-story ADUs, which is really exciting. So now state law allows you to build two-story ADUs. If you're in a single-family area next to transit, you get up to 18 feet, and then a potential addition of 2 up to 20 for your roof pitch, if that's something that's inhibiting you from your local design rules. And then in multifamily areas, you get the same. And then if you're building an attached ADU on a two-story home, you can actually go up to 25 or whatever the local height limit is, whichever is, I believe, whichever is lower. The height rules were, I think, pretty exciting, and I think will help create some capacity, some feasibility for ADUs in a lot of places.
One little question, and then we'll crack into some of the detailed questions in the chat. When do all these take effect? Do we need the cities to adopt ordinances, or do they just come into being, Louis?
Great question. So in most cases, the cities do not need to adopt ordinances, and actually in none of the cases here do cities need to adopt ordinance changes. This will probably inspire a lot of cities to adopt ordinance changes so that their policy is consistent with that in state law. But these laws come fully into effect on January 1 of 2023. And so whatever the next business day is after that, you can walk into the planning counter and use them.
That's awesome, right? So you come in on January 2nd is a Monday, and you can submit. And if the city's confused, you just show them the legislation, and
Right.
they'll get unconfused pretty fast, right? That's what the staff is good at. All right, so let's crack into some of these questions. Do we know how the new two-story laws might interact with CCRs or HOAs?
Oh, good question. So the height is not, there's no reference to, in the law, there's no reference to CC&Rs and the way that height's supposed to interact with that. But other laws, including some passed by Assemblymember Friedman and one passed by Assemblymember Ting, make it very clear that where the legislature says they are allowing ADUs, they intend to allow those ADUs in HOAs or where those ADUs would be otherwise prohibited by CC&Rs. So I'm not a lawyer. Nothing I have here is legal advice for you, but I would definitely push on that argument and say that, the state law is very clear that it wants me to be able to build an ADU, notwithstanding the CC&Rs. And, if we need to strengthen the language about CC&Rs in existing law, that's actually something that you should circle. I mean, let Ryan know that, and Ryan will let me know that, and we'll think about a fix there.
That's a big part of this, right? Is that it's always
Right.
the legislation's a work in progress. So when you guys see something that's not lining up with the intent of the legislators, you come tattle to me. I make sure people like Louis know, and then we get it worked on in the next batch. Which, the
Right.
cycle's kind of tightening up. Actually, we're getting new rules every year. Almost
There's not
these
that much to
days.
do now. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, that's a great answer. Thank you for the question. So that's HOAs out of the way. Phew. That's always one of the big ones. Again, Josh said, "Hey, can you have a two-story or even a three-story ADU if the house is only one story?"
You can. Yeah. So if you're in one of these transit zones, as the law identifies them, and they're actually, it's pretty good transit service. So it's likely that you're not in one of these. But if you want to know, you can contact your regional government, your council of government. So in Los Angeles, that's the Southern California Association of Governments. In the Bay Area, it's the Bay Area. It's it's ABAG. It's the Association of Bay Area Governments. Here in Sacramento, where I'm located, it's SACOG. You can email them and say, I want to know if I'm in one of these zones, and they should be able to tell you if you are, because they keep the plans that those are recorded in. You can also check your sustainable community strategy. So, for example, you could pull up, I'm in the city of Sacramento, or let's use a clear example, City of Davis sustainable community strategy. That will tell you where those applicable transit plans are. But nothing about the law says you already have to have a two-story ADU. I'm sorry, two-story primary dwelling to build a two-story ADU.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then now the part of that question that says three-story ADU, I'll put an asterisk there and say, hey, anything's possible if your city wants you to build three stories.
Right.
but that's not in the state rules. Like there are 4 height restrictions that you could fit into in the state rules, and none of them are really designed to give you a third story. You could always get tricky, like you could build below, you could start below grade,
Like dig
right?
down. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I've heard of stuff like that, but like that's not what the intent of the law is. So if you run into obstacles, it's much harder to argue like, hey, let me do what I want to do,
Right.
because you're getting farther and farther from the intent. What's another good example? Yeah, so like yeah, but watch yourself. I think that's also illustrative of how we think about these laws, right? Like Lewis has worked hard to get these state laws passed. Now it's up to each jurisdiction to enforce that state law or pass refinements on how it's enforced at the local level.
Hmm.
That tends to take time, right? Because
Right.
like even a fast city, they're gonna vote to ask their staff to work on an ordinance.
Right.
Staff takes like a month, comes back, proposes it, then they have to vote on that, then they have to read
Right.
it in multiple times. So like that's why there's this unique window of opportunity, because the laws are going to go into effect on January 1st, whether or not that process goes through.
Right.
And so between January 1st and whatever the earliest date your city can pass an ordinance, barring an emergency ordinance, that's a window where you know what the rules are. It's the state rules. Do rooftop decks allow? Are they allowable on a 2-story ADU? I can talk a little bit to this one. Um,
Go
it
for it.
varies.
Yeah.
It varies by jurisdiction what the
Yeah.
rules on rooftop living space are, and it's not. It doesn't sort of the 2-story thing is colloquial. The 2-story rules are about building height that is allowed, maximum building height, and rooftop decks are like a separate thing that you do on top of that building.
Right.
So there's overlap between how those get litigated, but like the statute doesn't now let you do a deck on the second floor if it's not enclosed. Now, if it's
Right.
enclosed, maybe you can find out. As always, the best way to do this is to chat up your planning department. Um, Especially once the rules are already in effect and they've had a chance to digest them and come up with some ordinances, you just hey, uh, here's my idea. I'm not going to use the full 2 stories, but I am going to put it in a rooftop deck, and I wanted to know, do I have to enclose it in any way to take advantage of that? And you kind of frame it as like a, do I get this or do I get that?
Hmm.
And you give 2 options that you want them to say yes to. Now they might come back and push pretty hard, right? And then that's a conversation. But again, just to plug the group, this kind of community is going to be chock full of people actually going through those steps. So, and there's no better resource than having a bunch of peers who are going through the same process as you, and some of them are a little bit ahead. That's a big plus of having these groups. On that note, if anybody has experience with some of these questions and wants to chat, go for it. Oh, good. People are answering questions in the chat. I love it. Could you build an ADU on top of your garage? Dakota, hey, another napping. You're in the same area as me. Yeah, we could definitely do above the garages now. Part of that height restriction is exactly that, right? It's just saying as long as the structure, even with your addition, is below that height maximum, that is permissible. And so there's 3 situations where by state statute you could do above the garage. Napa is a town where we actually were limited to 16 feet before, and so that opens you up if you're close to public transit, if you've got a multi-story multifamily, or if you're attaching to the main house. So if it's an attached garage, good news. But a lot of cities were allowing above the garages already, so it just kind of
Right.
it kind of depends. You got to check your local zoning. A good question about combining 2 stories in front and building in front with the front setback restrictions removed in some ways. Can we build a 2-story in front of an existing 1-story house? That's an easier question to answer. But then the second part is, and what are the dimensions from the street that I can build? That part's hard. do you want to tackle the statutory part, Lewis?
So I don't see a reason why the statute doesn't allow for a two-story ADU in a front yard. And now that the law says clearly that local governments cannot impose front setback requirements on most ADUs, you could probably build a lot line two-story ADU in most cases, at least as long as you're eligible for the 2 stories, which is you're building attached to a home that's 2 stories, or you're building in a transit area, an area served by transit. So, Ryan, am I right on that?
Yeah, that's my read. In Sacramento, can I build a two-story? Yeah, yeah. So these two-story rules apply statewide. Now, not
Right.
every lot applies can get into those buckets of
Right.
18 or 25 feet. So check out the videos or the blogs, all the kind of broad summary descriptions. I don't want to get bogged down in that because that's available on other places for free. But broadly, yeah, every city has some lots that can do this almost. Um, Talking about split levels in two stories, yeah. So again, think of the two-story rule as just a maximum building height, and then what you can do within that building height depends on your current situation and the permitting possibilities. If you've got a multifamily property where you could do two ADUs, then yeah, you could do stacked ADUs in a lot of jurisdictions. They go two stories. So one on the bottom floor, one on the top floor. Or you could do them like townhouses stuck together, right? If you're in a jurisdiction where you can only build one ADU, uh, like you've got a single family home and there's no density bonus, there's nothing unusual that would let you do two, then your whole two-story is probably an ADU. Although you could combine it with other stuff, right? You could combine it with SB9 potentially, and the ground floor is a dwelling, not an accessory dwelling, but a primary dwelling, and the ADU piggybacks off of it, right? So you could imagine a lot of different combinations where you have stacked something that feels like a duplex, even though that's not the legal term, and it's stacked. You could imagine that. Does the maximum square footage change with the two stories? It does not, unless the local ordinance says it does. So if your maximum is 1,200 square feet, your
Oh,
600. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm excited because I remember what I'd
Nice.
forgotten I
Do
wanted
it.
to
Do
say
it.
earlier. But please continue your thought. So I should definitely put a pitch in for the builders, especially on this call, to join the Casita Coalition.
Yes.
I'm on the board. The Casita Coalition has a members only tool that we make available to folks when HCD answers a question about ADUs. We add that answer as a precedential citation in our ADU question database, which is searchable. So if you want to know what HCD has said about any of these topics before, you can search the Casita Coalition database really easily. And so I encourage anyone on this call to consider becoming a member and get access to that.
Yeah. If you're a pro, then you can become a member and get access to that. So like
Right.
builders, architects, vendors, consultants. I use this weekly. It's a very good tool. All right. Before there's a ton of really good questions in the chat, and I'm gonna stay late and plow through as many of them as I can. But I just want to talk a little bit about this group and how meaningful it is to me that you all showed up today. I think a lot of people have been asking if this recording is going to be available. We're going to put a short version on YouTube, but the good parts, the juicy parts, that unedited version is available only for the members, the founding members of How to ADU, who are going to be subscribed members, right? You're going to get full access to this community and all those recordings as part of that membership. I think I've been hearing from you guys for a year now, but especially over the last couple of months with the grant and these new laws, that you don't always know what to do, how to take advantage of these situations. You get stuck, you're unsure, you hit resistance. And I've been working on this kind of group pretty long and hard, researching it, even hired a consultant who's sitting in the back alley, back bleacher seat back here. And just to think about what the way I can move forward is that delivers the most bang for your buck. And I think that it's combining the best parts of our Facebook community with the best parts of my coaching calls into this community resource where y'all get to help each other in addition to my regular virtual coaching and group coaching. And you still, because we're building it, you still get access to me directly like this. And you get access to people who are smarter than me like Louis, right? So it's like a win-win-win-win-win if we can make this community work. So tonight, I'm talking to some of the founding members in this webinar. It's not for everybody. If you're like, I'm not going to start my ADU in the next couple months, then don't worry about it. Like, that's not for you. But if you're serious about doing this and making a dream come true, building a really life-changing structure back there in the backyard that's not just some building, it's a home, then I highly recommend joining, because you're going to be in a peer group, and you've seen the quality of questions, you've seen the quality of answers in the chat. Y'all are already helping each other. This is going to be a group that gets a lot of ADUs done, and you're going to get done faster. You're going to get done on a tighter budget, and you're going to get done in the most sort of the most beneficial way possible based on the new rules, because you're at the front of the curve. Next month, we're going to do a webinar about the $40,000 grant update. That's already live. I'll pop a link in the chat. But to do that, you got to be a subscribe member. This one's free, but from now on, these monthly webinars are part of the subscriber only group. And that's hopefully going to show all this value, because you're going to see all the documents that have been going out from HPP Cares and other entities at Cal HFA. I've got a process map that I'm drawing based on everybody who's in those early cohorts who applied in early August. So that's what that's about. I really love that y'all came. I'm going to pop links in the chat so that if you want, you can check it out. So if you look forward to being a part of a community that's of people who's getting their ADU done, and you want to participate in that community, actually do the work, please consider following the link in the chat and checking it out. I think being a part of a cohort like this, I just did Leadership Napa Valley in my community, and it's so crazy how beneficial it is to be in a group of people who are going through the same thing, understand all the stuff you're going through, and can relate to all the stuff you're working on. Like this is a big marathon, right? The ADU process, and you're gonna get your legs swept out from under you at some point. And I'm sorry ahead of time, but it gets so much easier if you know somebody who relates to the fact that you're obsessed with a permit, or that has the same kind of mental space as you. Because I talked to my wife about housing, and eventually she just shuts the door. Like there's a limit on how much you can do that. So it pays to be in a group like this. If you see the value, then follow the link in the chat, and you'll figure it all out. And thank you so much for considering it. And for being here and giving me feedback on this whole experience. All right, having said all that, thank you for listening to the spiel. I think let's plow into some more questions.
Can I jump in on that, Ryan?
Yeah, please, Liz, please. Thank you.
I want to say there are very few people that I go to for advice on housing stuff, and Ryan is definitely one of them. He's the real deal. So I do hope you take him up on that.
Thank you very much, Louis. That means the world to me. When I started in here, I was like looking up to the legends who've been passing these laws. It means so much to me that I get to be rubbing shoulders with you in this room, and you such a ringing endorsement.